Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 313. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined on this episode once again by friend of the show, Myron Rumsey. This is the second of a two-part that we started in episode 312, looking at the 4 Green Lantern books, and Myron was kind enough to join me, and we discussed Red Lanterns number 11 and Green Lantern's New Guardians number 9. Also on this episode, we have some great listener voicemails, and I want to thank everyone for participating in that. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. We are sponsored this episode by DCBService.com. They have a special this month. There is going to be 55 DC Zero issues coming out in September, and we're going to cover them on the show. We're actually going to take a look at all of them. We figure it's a great way to take a look at the directions all the books are going in. They're doing a bundle on this. It's $174.45 regularly, 50% off, only $87.23. That's an amazing discount for 55 books. I know there's a lot of people out there who probably aren't picking up all those series, who are interested in the Zero issues because they want to see the directions different books are going in. Maybe they're looking to change things up. Maybe they just want to see some of the backstories of some of the favorite characters. That 50% off offers a great budgeted opportunity for anyone who's interested in looking at those Zero issues. But we're going to take a look at every single Zero issue as they come out, because we want to kind of take a look at globally where the DC Universe is heading, and that's going to be a launching point for some new series as well. So we're really looking forward to that. Over at InStockTrades.com, they have select DC trades at 60% off. And this is just a great opportunity. Like 52, the companion, I'm just looking at that just on a whim. It's $19.99 regularly, 60% off, only $8. 52, the covers, $19.99 regularly, again, 60% off, only $8. If you start doing the math on that, you're saving a ton of money. It's a great opportunity to stock up maybe a bunch of trades that you've been looking for, to get a bunch. Remember, if you get $50 worth, you get free shipping. So if you're taking that 60% off on a lot of trades, you spend $50 and get free shipping, your dollar's just being maximized over at InStockTrades.com. So it's a great chance to get a lot of these trades at this amazing deal. So there's probably a bunch of stuff you might have been looking at. I know I'm always looking for trades and back issues and things that I haven't seen before. And trades are usually, for me, a great opportunity when there's something that I haven't been reading, to get a chance to grab that in a nice bundle. I like reading the complete story. I like following trades that way for series that I don't normally get. So there's probably a lot of you listening who are in that same boat that I'm in, that look for these kind of opportunities to stock up maybe on 3 or 4 trades in a series at a great price. I do that on convention floors a lot, and this is better than a lot of convention discounts that I see. So definitely check out InStockTrades.com for those amazing deals. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in depth in the plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk some comics.
A scarlet costume ejects from his ring, and in a blur of motion, police scientist Barry Allen becomes the Flash.
You know, I want to talk about Red Lanterns. This is the writers Peter Milligan. I'm inventing new names. Artist Miguel Sepulveda. Colorist Rain Beredo. Letterer Carlos M. Manguel. Cover by Ed Benes and Nathan Eyring. Assistant editor is Sean Makowitz. The editor is Pat McCallum. And apologize for any name butchery, but this is the issue Love and Hate. This has been a book when I heard Peter Milligan was going to be writing it, I was really excited for it because I'm already a fan of Peter Milligan's writing. I think originally when they were talking about doing a book potentially about the other Corps, I was thinking to myself, an anthology title would be kind of fun because you could explore all different kinds of Corps. But since reading this 10 issues in, I'm really seeing the benefit, and I don't know that it mattered which Corps they did, because I think they're all unique, and they've got something interesting, especially with when we talked about the Indigo storyline that was going on in Green Lantern. I think they've all got something special and unique about them that would make for an interesting series to follow. But obviously you can't launch all of them, because there comes a point where you're going to have to say, there's just too many books. You want to keep the Green Lantern line without it being overexposed. This was really a good choice because we've gotten into the head of what it means to be a Red Lantern and how different that is from really any other kind of quote-unquote superpower or any other type of ring, how it really is this duality of, our human Jack Moore, he's Rancor. He used to be human. He fights many, many times to hold on to Jack Moore, but then also realizes the benefit of totally embracing Rancor, how it makes him more powerful when he gives into the rage and becomes something else. It makes him something different. His, so to speak, because they die, really, realistically. They're no longer alive in the sense of the way we think of people being alive, because it is their power that if that shuts off, they will eventually die from this lifestyle, from becoming a Red Lantern. That whole rage thing it's something very different, and I really have loved that aspect of the book. Talk about a book that emphasizes a political structure. When you've got people working off of the emotion of rage, and then on top of that, you've got some of them who are able to be more coherent than others, because these were all beings that essentially were created by Atrocitus. And Atrocitus really controls them through the rage, and they follow him usually in his mind pretty blindly by the way that he had them before. But Bleez was the one he chose to say, okay, I need a confidant. I need somebody. And he chose Bleez to be more coherent, more with it. And that is interesting how that relationship with Bleez being more coherent, Bleez has different ideas. Bleez has ways that she thinks Atrocitus is weak. She thinks she has the right ideas on how to lead the Corps. I really have loved how that has developed over time. I think it's been a strength of this book. My understanding of how this is different than any other structure of any other type of team imaginable has been really, really great. I don't know what you call them. I wouldn't call them heroes per se, but I don't know that I would call them necessarily villains. They're an interesting, and I don't know, maybe you have in your mind a different answer for that, and there is no right or wrong to that. It's interesting how I'm having trouble putting a label on what I actually consider the Red Lanterns and all this. Where are you at with this?
They're very much the gray character, because some of the things that they did early on when they showed you the nature of rage and how rage could be different things for different people, you can't put a cookie cutter on them, because they all come from different places, different reasons why they feel the rage. When you look at the story of Bleez versus the story of Ratchet's a very, his story was very, you felt bad for the character. You really made him identifiable, and you understood his pain. The same is true with Atrocitus. You could almost justify the anger. But when you saw Bleez and how she acted to her potential suitors, not knowing why she was like that way, she came off looking very cold, and you couldn't identify with her in any way, shape, or form, or rally behind her. So it's been interesting. This book, I think of all of them, and I know I'm as guilty of this as other people are, this has probably been the book I've been the most critical of. And I think some of the problem I had with the series, at least when it started out, was that Peter Milligan was dealt a really rough hand. I mean, you've got a book full of characters, most of them who can't carry on an intelligent conversation. So you've got to do something to get them to a point at which you can really build their characters, because all they could do is grunt and talk in broken words, except for Atrocitus. So you kind of spent a few issues doing that. And then you had Atrocitus, whose the fuel for his rage was taken away. So you had a character without a sense of direction, leading a group of characters that couldn't carry on a conversation. How do you hold a book together? And I think there was maybe some stops and starts in the beginning. I think the last couple of issues have been better than maybe some of the early ones. I know we've kind of talked about it over on the blog and the podcast of OA about the book being a little disjointed, but I think it's kind of coalescing. I think Red Lanterns is a series that will probably read better in trade, because it's more long-form storytelling, and when you read an issue, sometimes some things seem pointless or wandering, but perhaps in the larger scheme of things, you get a better grasp of it. But it's been a tough book for a lot of people. Just because it seems to wander a little bit. And I've been very kind of trying to be patient with it and trying to find the things that I like about it. And sometimes I struggle harder to find more positive things than negative things, but maybe that's because I'm overly critical on it. And I think sometimes because it's being held up with books that like Green Lantern Corps and Green Lantern, which are so good. It's not that Red Lanterns isn't good. It just isn't as good as, perhaps in some ways, the way I'm thinking of it should be, as these other books.
I'm finding that what I really like about it is that it's not those books. And yeah. I don't mean that in any way, shape, or form as a criticism on the other Green Lantern books. I think one of the things I think I would have been a lot more disappointed if they launched a fourth Green Lantern book.
Yes, I agree.
And I think the reason why is I think those other 3 books are doing what they do, completely agreeing with what you're saying so well. I think launching a 4th one, you're putting a lot of pressure to really try to create that magic a 4th time.
Yeah.
And I think what's working about those books is you've got 3 very different toned books that are equally, I think, capturing the same type of quality. What I like about this is it's taking something that I think has been so richly developed, and that's this idea of the different core and just how each emotion means such a very different thing for each book. And this book really embraces that. And the tone, the way it carries itself, has been all about that. I agree with you that this has gotten better as it's gone along. And I think one of the areas where it's gotten better is I think they developed early on a lot of what you were saying, a lot of the difficulties you were mentioning, I think, really gives Atrocitus's decision to bring somebody else to the forefront as being more coherent validity. Mm-hmm. Because not being able to communicate, not having that confidant that he can trust, leads Atrocitus to do something that really might turn out to be a big mistake.
Yeah, it could certainly backfire on him. I think that the Rancor story to me has been – to me, that's when the book really started to click for me because I really got into the story of Jack Moore and how he became Rancor and watching him through his eyes, how he loses his humanity, yet he's trying to grasp a hold of it, but yet he still needs to embrace his new identity and he's losing himself in the process. To me, that's what's been bringing me back issue after issue for the last 4 or 5 issues.
You know why that works for me, though? And I'm echoing everything you're saying, but I think all of the stuff building to that in this book – when it happened to Jack Moore, I felt I had a much better understanding of what that is like for Jack Moore, that seeing it happen to a human, Jack kind of took it to the next level then, because we were now having commentary from a human as they were going through it in a way that we really haven't seen since Guy Gardner, and I don't think it went because of Guy having the duality. I don't think it went for Guy to the same level that it's gone with Jack Moore. So I think it's really interesting how this book over time has developed into this. And I agree with you. It stepped up a notch when Rancor was introduced. I thought that was something that really – it was at a point where this book really needed this to be taken to the next level, to be taken to – pushing things a little bit closer to the quality of the other Green Lantern books. But I do think the stuff leading up to it was essential for that to give impact to Jack Moore becoming the Red Lantern when he did.
I think when you look back over it long term, you'll see why some of the things were the way they were in the beginning, because you needed that to get to here.
Yeah, I do think it's a book that you really need in order to appreciate where it's gone over 11 issues. You need to kind of take a look back and see a lot of the stuff that was happening before was prelude to the real meat and potatoes when Rancor was introduced.
Yeah, I think I end up being maybe a little more critical for the book. I'm in like with it. I'm not in love with it, but I would not read it either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. And, we don't have to necessarily totally agree on where I'm really digging the book, and I have from the beginning. I think I walked in with that mentality, though, because I guess I was looking forward to a good Peter Milligan read. So I walked in with that mentality, and I don't know that we have to necessarily agree on that. And I think a lot of the listeners are going to be in kind of the same boat. There's some people that aren't reading it. I've seen from our forums. There's some people who are reading it that are in your place. And there's people who are in my place where they're digging it too. And I don't know. There's not really a right or wrong answer there. It's all personal
preference.
There's
definitely no wrong answer there at all. It's a matter of what people's personal interests and tastes are. I don't have any familiarity with Peter Milligan, so I walked into it without that at all. But I think, if you look at, for people in my own situation, you have to step back and recognize what he was dealt to work with. He was given a set of characters that are difficult to write a book about. And he has to spend some time getting them to where he needs them to be so he can start doing what he wants to do with the book. And I think when you look at the other 3 Lantern books, you've got pretty much established characters there that people recognize and understand, and you've got them anchoring the book, even like in New Guardians, although you may not know a lot about the other colors of the spectrum. You've got Kyle anchoring the book. And I think in Red Lanterns, you just didn't have that. And so I think it kind of started it with almost a handicap. Yeah,
and I think over time, I like the connectability now with it's funny, the issue that I chose to chat about when we get to New Guardians is going to seem strange. I want to talk a little bit more about issue 9, and the reason why is because I think you start to see when you take a look at issue 11 of this book and issue 9 of New Guardians, how well editorially these books and writing, and I can't pretend I'm not some expert on the inner workings of what goes on editorially and with writers. I think in some cases it works better than others. I think there's a certain balance that has to be there where the writer's concepts and all that have to be encouraged, embraced, and opened, and you have to really know how to, I think, work with your writers to advance things and let their creativity because they're the meat and potatoes. But I think there's also a sense that when you got a shared universe like Green Lantern, you have to make sure that they interconnect. And these moments with Guy, this feels very much like the same Guy that we're seeing in Green Lantern Corps. The events that we're seeing with his conviction with John Stewart is the same conviction we're seeing here with Rancor. It's the same conviction that we saw in his own book when he went on that top secret mission. This is the same Guy Gardner that's doing those type of things. He's going in right now saying, I told this guy, he pleaded me for help, and I'm going to do this. I understand what he's going through. I've been a Red Lantern before. I know what that situation's like. And then the shock when he shows up and sees a power battery destroyed on the planet, a central power battery. That's something that for him as a Lantern, he understands what the symbol of the green power battery, the central power battery, is for them. To see that destroyed in a different way for the Red Lanterns is something that would be shocking for him. And I don't know, I really, really, the psychic echoes that Hawk sees in those moments, they were things that really are starting to engage me in this book. I think seeing this world through the eyes of the Green Lanterns was really something that needed to happen at this point. I think that adds a connectability because for me, the Green Lanterns are my eye into this universe. And I'm not just talking about Red Lanterns, I'm talking about their whole book and everything like that too. I think we as readers, we want to be Green Lanterns. They're the ones. So when we get an opportunity to see a world and connect to it through the eyes and shock of a Guy Gardner, that starts to connect me to a book in a way that I need to. The fact that it's a human now who's going through the Red Lantern process, like Rancor, that's connecting me to this book in a way that Atrocitus is cool. I love Atrocitus as a character, but I need that objective way to view Atrocitus that Rancor has started to give me. So I think that's added something more to what I've been enjoying from Atrocitus, because I've loved Atrocitus. I think Atrocitus is just a terrific character. But I think seeing that through Rancor's eyes has been helpful. Seeing Bleez through the eyes of the New Guardians has helped me enjoy this book more, because now I'm following Bleez all the more. Like, I wanted to see where New Guardians was taking place in relation to, and New Guardians did this, in relation to what's been going on in Red Lanterns with her becoming coherent. She wasn't always that way in New Guardians. That was something that they showed us, this switch is now happening. This happened in Red Lanterns. Now we're showing it here in New Guardians as well. So that's where I think the more that this book has become interconnected with the other titles without having to be reliant on them, that has increased my enjoyment of this book as we've gone along. I think those books have increased my understanding because I see those characters objectively through the eyes of the characters who I've grown with over time already. And I think that's been a nice interconnection. I think it's been a strength of this book.
Yeah, I think, perhaps because the book was in isolation on itself for a while too, it made it difficult for people to latch into the book. But seeing things start to come together, and I loved seeing Fatality and Bleez's conversation. I wish there had been more time spent on that, because I really liked that part of this issue where you kind of saw them, how their lives were echoes of each other, but their paths are so different. And I thought that was really dynamic, and those two characters work really well together. And I just loved their whole conversation throughout this issue.
Yeah, the reason why I want to talk about New Guardians number 9 is because of – I think that one really shows a lot more of the interaction between the different corps. And I think it's a good companion to taking a look at Fatality and Bleez here, because we get to see Fatality reacting to, and not just Fatality, all of the New Guardians being called in by Kyle. And I want to talk about that, because I think that there's something that's being shown there. You've got these people who are a part of these different pieces of the emotional spectrum, and they've embraced that. But then they've been through so much together. That is something that has changed them and has affected them. And we're seeing that here with Bleez and Fatality. It's different because of, obviously the relationship between the two. But we see that Fatality really is a Star Sapphire. And she's looking at, how can we help Bleez? I can help you become one with this love. You can be a part of that. But it's also, the other Red Lanterns are noticing this, it's also a doorway that's really only open for females.
Yeah. I loved Zilius Zox's comment. It's like, what is this, an all-girl club only? I mean, the thought of Zilius Zox in a Star Sapphire outfit's a little, some images you just shouldn't see.
But it's an interesting part of them. See, the Star Sapphires are somebody I would love to see more storytelling with, because I would love to see the love concept. How does that work with their relation to male characters like that? I would love to learn more about that and why it's so exclusive, and see that developed more.
Yeah, it's interesting if you think about how the Red Lanterns, Bleez is one of the few Red Lanterns that's there, but they're just as capable of feeling great rage. But on the Star Sapphire end, you don't really see any male Star Sapphires. What I loved about seeing those two characters in particular is because they're at opposite ends of the emotional spectrum. And one of the rules of the emotional spectrum that Jeff Johns had was the further away from the center of the spectrum you are, the more the emotion controls you than you control the emotion. And so it was interesting to watch characters that are so dynamically opposed in the tone of the emotion, but yet they play so well together off of each other. And to me, I just loved that part of this issue was the highlight for me.
I loved Fatality as a character when she used to hunt down Kyle. I love that one of the things that Milligan did here is in this moment, there's an opportunity to work with the fact that, talk about a character who has the potential for great rage. That was Fatality. Her whole reason for hunting down Kyle was revenge. The whole bit with the blood where, if you do, my blood will, do you have any rage left in you, hate left in you? If you do, my blood will surely find it. And that moment was just something I really, really loved, because as a reader of this character, it's something is there. And I love that it's revealed in this issue, too, in the sense that, Fatality even talks about the fact that she understands it. She understands those feelings and what they mean. That dialogue, you're right, between them I thought was very powerful, because you've got two different philosophies of two different cores because of the emotions that they focus on. And yet you've got a Fatality who can say that I remember what that was like. I've been there. And those tones I thought were really important in this issue. I think that's where the different cores, the strength of them work. I had no idea when they introduced so many core that now we'd still be at this point in time. I thought they would somehow dissipate. I thought that was something they were going to do for a short period of time. I don't know why I thought that. I just thought it was something for a story element, that it might appear again at some point in the future, but I didn't think it would be an ongoing concept like this to keep going. I knew there'd be a War of the Rings, and I figured at the end what was going to happen was we'd be left with the Green Lanterns. I don't know why I thought that. And I love that I was wrong. And I love that they went so much farther with it, because I think there's so much story to be told here. There's limitless potential of possibilities because of it.
Well, I think when you look back over, you and I have both been reading comics for a fairly long time, that we both come from the era of the throwaway villain, where, a villain of the month comes in, fights the good guy, and at the end of the month he's vanquished, and next month it's a different guy or a different character. And we're in an era now where you don't get a lot of new creations that have any staying power. So to see this many new characters, I wouldn't have expected them to last forever either. And there's a debate going on right now is in this Third Army storyline with all these cores being dismantled. Is this how they get moved off the playing field, or are they going to stick around? But it's interesting to see how many things have been created for this particular universe, this particular part of the DC universe. All these elements that are still here and still finding new ways to use them in ways that you wouldn't think of.
One of the things that I really, really enjoyed with Rancor's development was you've got somebody who's really green, who hasn't really been trained. And you got him put out where he's got to take a look at the whole universe and how distant he is from those stars. And it just made me realize, I'm like, what would, if you really had power, like superpowers, where you could go out into space, you didn't know how to use them, you didn't know how to benefit. Would you feel like that? That sense of being alone, that sense of, could you get lost? I mean, look at what he's looking at.
Tom wouldn't work or something,
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't know I don't know how the rage works. Like, I know with Green Lanterns, they can talk to their ring, and their ring's got like a navigation, like a built-in GPS. How does that work for the Red Lanterns? What do they home in on? And that's something I'm actually enjoying about his character is learning how they operate, because he is so green and he's got to kind of figure out his way along the way. He doesn't have that like cool mentor or anything. They're all trying to kill him.
Yeah, well, I think the Red Lantern ring has a GPS, but all it does is yell at you when you made a wrong turn.
Yeah. Yeah, you
don't. Left on the freeway, not a right.
Like what all of our GPSs really want to do if they become sentient. I said get into the left lane.
Now, you missed your stop.
Yeah, and I'm not recalculating. But, it's one of the things I do think I agree with you. His addition to the book, I think, has only stepped up the book because I think he gives us an opportunity to see things from a novice level. And I think we need to see that because I think the Green Lantern concept, I think, is so well laid out for so long. There's been so many great stories explaining the ring and what it does, and from even when Ollie Queen put it on. And you got to see just how much it took for him to even engage willpower to make a single arrow. You've had so many great stories that have shown what it means to be a Green Lantern and what that ring is and all that. You need somebody like Rancor to take us to like a beginning spot and build us along the way with what it means to be a Red Lantern and how it does to you and how you feel about the world and how you try to interact with those powers in a way that's going to be so totally different than what we're used to with the Green Lanterns. And this is a guy who hasn't had another ring. I like that too. I like that this isn't a guy who was previously a Sinestro Corps member or an Indigo Lantern or whatever. He's totally green. This is totally out of his realm. He has no history with any of it. And I think that's essential to his development. I think that's what has made him strong too.
Well, and what's interesting to me too is just the very nature of the emotion, because if you think about when people lose their cool, they lose their humanity in that moment. They give in to the emotion. The emotion rules them. And so we're witnessing Jack Moore fall victim to his own emotion. It's he's a victim of his own rage. And now he's at a point of no return. And to me, that's a compelling story to me. And I'll be honest, if this book had started out with that in the beginning, I probably would be this book's biggest fan because I just found that part so interesting, and the nature of rage and what happens when. And I don't know whether I'm over evaluating Peter Milligan's run, but I looked at some of the early issues, how it almost seemed to. I always use the words lack focus, but that's not quite, because that sounds like it's missing something. That it was almost going in a lot of different directions because Atrocitus didn't have anything to focus his rage on. And is this part of the nature? Is Peter Milligan speaking about the nature of anger and that it's hard to maintain? And when we can't maintain our anger, but we are so much of a victim of that, or we're addicted to rage, or we're addicted to anger, or addicted to negativity, do we just go looking for it elsewhere? And so, I almost think on a long form storytelling is he's talking as much about the nature of the emotion as he's about the characters.
See, it's funny. A lot of the commentary I've seen from people when they're talking about Red Lanterns and what they've disliked about it, I've thought has been sometimes some of the strength. And let me explain that. We saw in Atrocitus, I think you're hitting the nail on the head on everything that you're supposed to see with Atrocitus. Atrocitus was a lost soul. He didn't have a direction there. He'd accomplished his goal with Krona, and you're left in a period where do I go from there? And I think some of the things that people were commenting on they were having trouble of getting attached to was you didn't, and maybe you're right, maybe introducing a Rancor right from the beginning and having that be like a second story that's going on while we're following Atrocitus might have worked better for attaching people. I was getting attached to the fact that we knew that like everything that Atrocitus had gone through, he'd had his revenge. He'd accomplished that thing that he'd been looking for. And now that he had that, he's a lost soul. What is my direction? Yeah. I've got all these Red Lanterns. I'm their leader. Where do we go now? What do we do now? The main purpose of us has been accomplished. We've done this. So where do we go from here? And I think when you're looking for that character to get attached to, it might be a little harder to get attached to that character that's the lost soul that doesn't have a direction, because how do you get attached to that direction? So I do understand a lot of that when people are saying that. I liked that, and I think it might be an issue of just with all the books that I'm reading, I found that to be fresh and different. Not to say that I want that to be the constant direction of this book, because I think where I'm saying is I think this book has evolved where we're seeing now with what's happened with Bleez, with Rancor coming on the scene, with everything that's going on with the power battery and Abysmus, we're seeing an Atrocitus that's realizing I need to find a way. Because if I don't, I'm going to lose it all. And what does that mean? And I think that in order to appreciate Atrocitus being in that place, you had to see him as that lost soul for a while and see just what has happened behind the scenes because he was in that place. Because it really was the fact that this happened with Krona that put Atrocitus in a place where everything that he had so richly controlled is now spiraling around him on so many different ways. And it's still continuing to, because now he's still focusing on this power battery thing versus being able to really get the Red Lanterns in order. And
I think if you look at Atrocitus, when you're a character that's been so consumed by hate and anger and rage for so long, it eats at you so that there's nothing left. And then what happens when the source of that goes away? I think it's an interesting story. I think what Peter Milligan's done is he's kind of told us that story by illustrating it, and he hasn't beat us over the head saying this is what's going on. And I think people may or may not be connecting those dots if that's indeed what he's trying to do. And that's part of the long-form storytelling. And I think that's what makes Atrocitus an interesting character, is that he's in a place now where he has nothing left and he's grasping for things to focus his rage on, because he's got nothing left and he doesn't know how to live his life without it.
Well, and I love that everyone around him, even those loyal to him, are seeing him as being weaker.
Yeah.
Like Scalix even mentions that. Atrocitus, you're weak. A blood prophecy could kill you. You know, he's got to find Abysmus. He knows that there is a limited time frame here. He needs to find Abysmus and undo what was done. And if he doesn't do that, they're done. The Red Lanterns are through. I love the contrast, though, because he and Bleez don't have that strong buddy-buddy relationship. Bleez is blaming the Star Sapphires to a certain extent, you know, what's happening. And it's a logical conclusion where she's looking at, you're an enemy of ours. You would benefit from this. So, you know, love hates rage. You know, love, you know, wants to dispel rage, I should say. Now, hates is not a good word for it, but wants to dispel rage. This would be a goal of love. So you benefit from this turmoil, from this happening. This is your opportunity to overcome the rage, so to speak. And I love that going on as a side story to what's going on with Atrocitus. I think that's where I'm saying this book's benefiting. You've got this thing going on with Bleach. You've got this thing going on with Atrocitus. You've got Rancor with his thing going on. I think we're now starting to see, slowly developed over time, a lot of interesting threads that they all matter to each other, but they offer a different type of emotion, a different type of storytelling that I think is beefing up the interest in the book. I think at issue 11, this is a book that has been developed into, in my eyes, and you don't have to agree with me, I'm just throwing out my 2 cents on this. It's developed into a book that I think over time, because these different threads are now finally starting to pay off, so to speak, this book has become very interesting with a character group that is starting to be very rich. And I do think it has benefited from things like, if you're reading a New Guardians and you know about Fatality, or if you know the character at all and you're seeing her interacting with Bleez here, it's starting to all make a lot more sense, like on why this book is unique. And it's showing a different sort of piece of the puzzle to the Green Lantern universe.
Yeah, I think when you look at, if you were to look back a year ago when these books first came out and you told people a Red Lantern's book was coming, probably the expectation they had is not the book they got.
Right.
You know, so I think that's where some of the dissatisfaction comes from, is this isn't what I was expecting from a Red Lantern book, but you almost have to sit back and say, well, this is the book that's here. What is it about? And I know I've wrestled with that myself, because you walk into every new book thinking, okay, this is a book about something I know, and this is what my expectation is going to be, and it may not be what the creative team is trying to tell as a story. And so, I think we owe it to ourselves to give it as much of a chance as we can. And if it's not your thing, then you don't buy it. You vote with your dollar. But I'm trying to, and I guess partially because I run a blog and a podcast that really focus on 4 books. I'm in all 4 of those books. I'm not going to drop a book just because I may or may not match my expectations. So maybe that's where some of my criticism may come from, is that it's not my expectation level of what I'm hoping for. But I'm trying to find the good things that are in it. Because I'm going to talk about the book one way or the other anyhow. I think Abysmus is an interesting character, and one of the unanswered mysteries for this book is who are his new bosses? Who are his new masters? He talks about these new masters. I think they're the Guardians.
I do too.
But you do too. Good. I'm glad I'm not alone thinking that.
Yeah, I think I don't think any of the question marks right now I think are going to point back. It goes to what you made a comment earlier where you were talking about who's trying to destroy each of these core. And I think that's where you made a comment where you're saying, I don't think this is the book that people were expecting. I'm looking at it now as this book is making sense for where the whole Green Lantern universe is going. Yep. I think the Red Lantern Corps, depending on how things play off with the Third Army, I think this is leading to the book that people were expecting. If it ends positively for them, it depends on what happens with these three people. I think Bleez, Atrocitus, and Rancor, and I guess you would throw Abysmus in there, are the ones to watch because I think they are critical in deciding what ends up happening with this core. Where does it go from here? And I think that's either going to lead to the direction that everyone was expecting or lead to more of what we're seeing Rancor come across, where we're going to see just mass destruction of all of the Red Lanterns, and that's going to be it for them. I think it's going to be A or B. They're either going to end up being the Red Lantern Corps that everyone was looking for, or they're going to wind up being done.
Yeah. It's interesting, because you've got the Sinestro Corps in a very similar situation right now where you've got you've got a killer with a ring, and it's not really a fully functional ring.
Yes.
Who knows where they're going to end up with what they're going to end up with by the time this is over with. Talking about the Star Sapphire piece and how it ties in, I've been kind of telling myself that Bleez didn't come to this conclusion on her own because I think that when she encountered Sade planted that seed in her that the Star Sapphires were coming after them as a way to manipulate the Star Sapphires because they're the only ones that have not been touched by this. So I've been kind of telling myself that Sade planted that seed in Bleez's mind. And I also think that Sade is behind Invictus myself, but that's just me.
I'm very curious to see. Sade's got something going on. We don't know what it is yet. So I'm very, very curious to see what's going on with Sade. Sade's up to a lot more than we all realize, I think. Now, the question is going to be how much of Sade is still Sade? In the sense that because she hasn't been manipulated by the Guardians the way that we've seen happening to the Guardians, I should say. She hasn't been pulled into all that. Will she side with them? Is she her own agent? We know that she's clearly doing things on her side to break away from the Orange Lantern, but what is that going to be? What does that look like? I don't know. I love that. That's an intrigue for me. I love wild cards because wild cards make you wonder, where are they going to stand? Are they going to side with one side? Are they going to side with the other? Are they going to wind up being some new approach to the whole thing? I don't know. And that's something that I'm finding engaging about her and that whole storyline.
One of the things I've been wrestling with myself, I'd love to hear your take on it, is the whole notion of the Guardians. Their actions are so opposite of the altruistic beings that we always kind of considered them to be. If you look back at the Guardians from the dawn of the Green Lantern mythology when they first came into play, and then through Hard Traveling Heroes where it almost seemed like they became heartless and they weren't necessarily altruistic, they just weren't capable of seeing the emotion underneath things, to where they are now. Do you think – I'm of two minds. On one mind, I'm thinking this is really their true nature, what we're seeing right now, and that their altruistic nature was just a facade, and this is really what's going on in the background, behind the scenes, that we're just being made privy to. Or is it a case of their interactions, because they've controlled their emotions for so long. They were possessed during the War of the Green Lanterns by the entities. Were they incapable of handling the amount and the richness of the emotion that they were impacted with? Did that somehow alter them in some way, or are they being controlled by some outside force? I mean, what's your take? Because I'm of three minds of it, as you can tell.
First, I want to say yes. No. Because I'm saying I don't have one set answer. I want to add one thing to what you're saying that I've often been thinking about. I also can't help but wonder if some of it might be overcompensating. I think one of the reasons why I love the Green Lantern books so much is I see many possibilities. And I love, it's fun, when Jim and I talk about comics, it's a lot of times I will have like a passionate view one way and Jim will have a passionate view the other way. But in the end, it's funny when we're done recording, a lot more of Jim's views will influence my own decisions, and listeners will call in with their views. This discussion here with you is influencing a lot of my views on things because your mind opens up to new possibilities that sometimes you need time to digest, and you'll kind of morph it into your own idea. But one of the things that I really have begun to wonder with the Guardians is, first of all, they have emotions. We've seen in their history that they do. It's not that they're emotionless. They do have emotions. They fight their emotions. They have become so convinced that reacting to emotions is a bad thing in their concept of order that they are overcompensating, I think, to the other side. And when you overcompensate, when you push so hard another way, you become extreme. It's almost like they're fighting so hard to get away from emotion that they are just as extreme as the Red Lanterns are with their rage. They are pushing so hard in the opposite direction that they're so trying to stomp out emotion that anything that could possibly have an emotional effect on them, could have an emotional effect on the direction of the universe, is something they feel needs to go because it gets in the way of their concept of, no, order in the universe should not be decided with emotion. It should be decided with the concept of order. So I think they're pushing so hard away from emotion that is leading them down this almost extremist villainous path and they don't see it that way. They see it as they're embracing order. They're embracing kind of the same way that, we see Atrocitus embrace rage. They're embracing order in the same way. In many ways, I think they're becoming emotional about order. No, I mean, and I don't know how else to put that. They are so they're so pushing to be stoic. They're so pushing to not have an emotional reaction that they're not taking stands on anything other than their idea of order. They're refusing to acknowledge the validity of anything else. And that becomes a danger when you've lost that open mind. I think our favorite Lanterns are the ones that can see and connect with each other, even though they're part of a different emotional spectrum. I think those moments are the ones that we as readers connect with on a deep level. It's one of the reasons why it might seem strange to people listening that I want to talk about New Guardians number 9 after this. It's because I think in that level in New Guardians number 9, I think was where we got to see what Kyle's done in putting this group together. And this crazy mishmash spiderweb of a group that is from all the different emotional spectrums. In that moment, we see so many people coming to the aid of the Blue Lanterns that really, on paper, shouldn't. Because their philosophies are so different. They should be embracing that this is happening. Instead, they have this relationship with Saint Walker that's come out of battle. And they're reacting to that. I love that. And I think that's something that the Guardians are so overcompensating in the other direction. They're threatened by that. They're threatened by the fact that there could be some power in all of the emotions embracing each other and learning to work and coexist and help each other and all being necessary and needed. They're having such trouble seeing that they want to stomp it out because it's a threat to what they are. That's why there's a death mark on Kyle. Why are they trying to kill Kyle? Why are they so threatened by him? Why is his having a ring that they can't seem to do anything about a problem for them? It's because of that. And I think that's something that's interesting. I don't know. Again, I'm rambling on like this is fact. It's a theory. And everything you were saying earlier, I'm not contradicting you in any way. This is just one of the ideas that I'm going on because when you were throwing off all your ideas, the reason why I said yes afterwards because I'm like sitting here, I'm like, no, I agree with everything you're saying. And this is just another idea that I've had. And this is probably one of many I will have along the way on the journey. And it's something that I'm finding that's interesting because they are a puzzle piece. And I know that's where you're really going with this. I don't know totally. But I love trying to wrap my head around it and figure it out. But I do see a group of people that are feverishly trying to embrace order to the point where they aren't letting anybody talk to them about any and they aren't acknowledging any contradictory opinions to that.
No. They are clearly out of their Vulcan minds.
Right. Yeah, that's a great example. And when you have there's a difference between conviction and denial. Conviction is something where you and I might have two varying different opinions about a subject area. But we can sit well, you know what, this book is a great example. You and I are in a little bit of a different place with this book. But we're listening to each other talk about this book and what's going on with it. And it's not changing our opinions drastically. It might help us see, I'm seeing the book in a different way because of the way you're seeing it, which is adding to my understanding of the book because I'm seeing it from a different perspective. You're seeing it from my perspective. In the end, we might be changed a little bit because of that. But in the end, you know, we kind of know where we're at on this book and this title, and it's kind of where, you know, it's come from reading 11 issues and our own pacing with it. And there's a conviction of that because we're not threatened by each other having a different opinion on it. The Guardians, on the other hand, if they had a different opinion on this book, would not listen to either of us. They wouldn't acknowledge it. They wouldn't acknowledge there's any validity to us having a different opinion on the book. That's where they're at right now. And they're not, I mean, to the point where they lobotomize one of their own to make sure there isn't a dissenting opinion. Because they did that. And that was a pivotal moment.
Yeah, it's another pivotal moment in what's been building. I think that's, again, it goes, you know, we've talked about it almost ad nauseum about how well this mythology is constructed, and that's really where it comes down to. There's so much going on, and it just fuels all that conjecture and all that speculation, and that's what I love about this universe. And I love talking with people who are passionate about it, no matter what direction it's in, because there's genuine interest behind that passion.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I want to talk about real quick this Abysmus versus Atrocitus fight at the end.
Yeah,
left in the cliffhanger, because it's funny to see Abysmus in such a different form.
Yeah,
and if it isn't the Guardians that have given Abysmus this jacked up power, I'm wondering who it is, because you know who has the ability to give him this, because this is not the same hopeless looking creature that we saw earlier. Seeing Atrocitus so overrun, because one of the things I've really enjoyed about Atrocitus in every one of his appearances, Atrocitus has been this self-made creature that's come out of what we saw in Secret Origin and has had such an impact on the whole Green Lantern universe over the time. It introduced a new story, a new concept, this concept of Red Lanterns versus there just being green and yellow. And it was really, in many ways, a launching point to the idea of multiple core. And to see a being of such power so easily overtaken by the creation that he had. Yes, I'm going to kill you, but not out of revenge. I don't believe in getting even. I love you, remember? It shows, though...
He loves him to death.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the kind of love that keeps on giving, right? But it's what I'm really curious about in the ending of that is Abysmus has clearly changed. Because what is driving him as a power source right now, if it's not rage?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, all those little ribbons of energy that came out that were red and yellow, and there's a little bit of green in there too. And I thought, boy, that's kind of interesting.
So, you know, is this the birth of a member of, you know, is he in some way part of the Third Army? Is he something new? Is he something different? I don't know. Because you're right, I noticed the different color of the ribbons as well. So I don't know. I don't know what's coming out of him.
But yeah, it's interesting to see a character like Abysmus, who's, you know, not Abysmus, but Atrocitus, who's been played as this, you know, he's the Kilowog style, he's this huge character, almost like a hulking character, and to see him laid out so quickly by this other character that's even bigger. You know, what happens when someone like a Hal or a Kyle or a John goes up against a character like Abysmus? You know, just when they've upped the ante, they up it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I like Sepulveda's artwork. For the most part, there was a couple of continuity things this particular issue that got to me a little bit, but I like the change in artwork. I like what he's brought to the texture and the costuming and the scale of things. And some of his visuals are really dynamic. And I think he's added a lot to the book in the 2 issues he's been on so far.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like the artwork as well. I also like the way he draws Atrocitus. Atrocitus for me is a character who you should get this sense of really imposing power. While at the same time, it's funny how I've grown over time to realize there's a philosophy to Atrocitus.
Yeah,
and there's something in the way that he's drawn now that I really get that sense more than in his early appearances. And that's not knocking what was originally done with him. I don't mean it that way. I think we were introduced to a character in Secret Origin that has evolved. And we're understanding him in a way now that I don't think we did in Secret Origin. That's not a knock. I think he was crafted to be a character that we were only getting a tiny piece of the puzzle to initially. And we were supposed to have a journey with him, and I'm glad that that journey is continuing over time, because I am finding his philosophy part very interesting, because it isn't that these Red Lanterns are these mindless beasts. And I like that. I think that's something that as it goes on further and further, I want to see more of that. I think that has been a part of the series that I've really enjoyed, is Atrocitus's internal dialogue. But I will go back and say, I think for some people, the lost soul aspect of it might have been hard to get attached to at first.
Definitely. I do. I will say, I do miss the pointy teeth. Yeah. But sometimes I look at him as like, is that the Red Skull? No. but I love the overall visual. And yeah, you're right. The thing with Atrocitus is when he first appeared, he appeared like a one-dimensional character. And I think this book has added a lot of depth to that character, and he becomes much more three-dimensional.
Which I think is needed. I think, if you're going to go forward with the character over time, he's going to need something like that. If you don't mind, I'd like to talk about New Guardians number 9, because I think a lot of our discussion is naturally leading to this. And I know for any listeners out there, I'm sorry for not jumping right to 10. And that's not to say that you and I can't talk on some level about issue 10. But I think 9, thematically, a lot of our discussions about what we're enjoying about this whole universe and how it feels so interconnected, I think issue 9 really embodies a lot of what I'm really liking about the whole Green Lantern universe as a concept, with all of these color core and all of the character directions. I just want to, Tony Bedard's the writer, Tyler Kirkham's penciler, Bat is on inks, Nei Ruffino and Hi-Fi are the colorists, Tomas Giorello is the penciler, Nathan Earing is the colorist, and it's on different pages in the book that it's spread out. Kirkham, Bat, Ruffino on the cover, Dave Sharp letterer, cover by Kirkham, Bat, and Ruffino, Sean Makowitz, associate editor, and Pat McCallum is the editor. This is a book, it's been really interesting for me how much, like when I first started reading it, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this book. And I've got to tell you how much this has become like my sleeper hit as one of the ones that every time I read the issue of it, I'm like, I'm really digging this book. And I talk so much, I think, out of force of habit. This isn't knocking either Green Lantern or Green Lantern Corps. I think they've continued to deliver what I've always expected from those two books. New Guardians, I think because it was the new launch out of the three, and it was launching a new concept, was something that I was like, I was trying to figure out how I wrap my head around, how I feel about this. We're focusing on these characters instead of the Green Lantern Corps. Yes, we've got Kyle on there, but it really has done a nice balance, I think, of introducing everybody to the point where in this issue on number 9, where it's Odin, and you see that the Blue Lanterns are being attacked by the Scarabs of, that are very similar to not similar, they're exactly like what Blue Beetle's going through, except that these are Scarabs that aren't damaged. I think seeing this particular issue and feeling like I want these other people to come and help Saint Walker, and that I feel there's a reason that they should feel he's a comrade, I think has been a strength of this book. 9 issues in, and I felt like there's no reason at all why these guys shouldn't be helping him out because of what they've been through together. I think when you can do that in 9 issues in a series and take color core that don't, in many ways, should do the exact opposite. They should all hate each other and not want anything to do with each other, to have seen that these guys have been through battles that have made them understand and respect each other. I think things that are happening in this series are pivotal to what's coming.
I agree 100%, Sean. It's interesting because the Guardians made it sound like, number one, they denied the existence of all the other Corps to begin with. But then they were like, these are our enemies. These are our enemies. But you've got Kyle showing how they can all work together, and he's doing the things that shouldn't be allowed to happen. And to me, that's the biggest threat to the whole Guardians philosophy right now. Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting. There's a lot of back history that we haven't seen yet that I think is going to really play into what's coming up. I mean, there were stories before the DC relaunch where we saw the Guardians wearing robes with the White Lantern logo on them.
Right.
And so clearly there was some playing around with all the emotions, and there's a lot more in that history that we have not seen, that has not been realized on the page yet, that comes into play. And why are the Guardians hiding all the existence of these other Corps, and what are they so afraid of? And Kyle flies in the face of all of that by assembling a team that in the beginning They were at each other's throats, but they've come together and started to realize the benefits of each other, or at least a mutual respect, and understand the reasons why they exist. And to see all of them come to Odom's aid is very telling in that it takes all these emotions to come together. If you look at it, it's an analogy for us as human beings. We have all of these emotions inside of us, and we have chaos when those emotions are in conflict, but we have inner harmony when they're all at peace with each other. And I think Kyle represents that side of the coin, opposing to what the Guardian's whole philosophy is, and that's what's made this book really refreshing. And I will be the first person to say I was not a big Kyle Rayner fan. That was, the whole era with Emerald Twilight and what happened afterwards. I left the book, not because I was angry about Kyle, but I couldn't relate to the character. I didn't like what they did to introduce the character, but that's an editorial decision. I just didn't find anything in Kyle that I could get behind. But this book has consistently, month after month, been neck and neck with Green Lantern Corps. If I had to rank the titles, they consistently been there as being as good as Green Lantern Corps to me in my mind. And he really represents something that nobody else in the Corps could have done. And to me, that makes this book very, very powerful. And again, I think going forward, this is why the Guardians went after him, is because he represents what they're afraid of.
I agree. And I think this book, I think that's why I use the term sleeper hit for me. I think I walked in with high expectations for Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps. And this book, I think, has been the shock for me at how good it really is and how enjoyable it really is. I think I'm with you when it comes to ranking. It's very tough to, I think, rank these three books right now, because of the fact that I think month in, month out, they're all delivering. You can't. I'm having trouble even saying that one book is surpassing the other, because I just think that the pacing and delivery of all of these books has been really, really solid. Great art, great stories, really good character development, and each one of them, every issue, I think, had things that made me go, wow, and made me think about the direction that the overall Green Lantern universe is heading. And I think this has been it's the reason why, for me, on this show, I rarely will jump back an issue. I will usually always go for the most current issue, just because, I want to, I figure we'll casually talk about something along the way. This issue stood out for me, though, as something. First of all, I love seeing Odin. I love seeing the different planets, and seeing them explored like that. But seeing the attack from the Reach, and seeing how they took something that's been going on in Blue Beetle and really brought it to a whole universe sense. The Blue Beetle thing is cosmic. The Blue Beetles had a bat, his Scarab has considered the Green Lanterns a threat. So now we're seeing why, what their relationship is. This is something the Reach would go to war and try to conquer them. It's, are you reading Blue Beetle at all?
No, I'm not. I did pick up the issue that had Kyle in it, just to kind of keep abreast of what was going on there.
I'll tell you the difference between Blue Beetle and this isn't going to ruin anything for you, but the reason why Blue Beetle is able to be the hero that we know, his Scarab was damaged. These Scarabs, you see them overtaking their hosts. Because his Scarab was damaged, he has a different sort of relationship with his Scarab. He's able to fight his Scarab, and they have like a conflict going on between them. Kind of what we see when St. Walker interacts with was it Kanjar Kai?
Oh yeah. He kind of disassembles that connection between the two,
right?
And he's allowed to be free. And that's kind of interesting dynamic. To have the Scarab be kind of against him in the first place, but it's damaged. That's kind of cool.
So Jaime doesn't need St. Walker to combat it because of the damage. Jaime's able to. It's not to say that Jaime is necessarily always the winning one. But, it's a different battle of philosophies between the two of them, because this Scarab's a part of this group right here. I mean, Jaime getting it was a mistake. Or I shouldn't say a mistake. The intention would be that thing would take Jaime over the way that it has all of these other creatures from all of their planets. So it's interesting. I think this is for anybody that's a Blue Beetle reader that's not reading New Guardians, issue 9 is a great point to read New Guardians as a Blue Beetle fan, to kind of see this aspect of it. I think it's handled very well. And I think it's good for New Guardians people to, if you're interested in what's Blue Beetle, all about the concept, you're seeing a different version of all of what's happening here. But this is very true to Blue Beetle. I think this is just a great decision. I love when the DC universe embraces itself, and you'll see guest appearances by villains and characters that maybe you wouldn't expect to occur in another title, and it leads to a greater understanding of both. I think there's something here for readers of both titles. I don't think you need to be reading both titles to enjoy this issue, but I think if you're a Green Lantern Corps fan, you get to see kind of a flavor for what that's like. And I think it's always cool when, I don't think you always have to use characters that appear in other books. I think sometimes it's terrific when there's characters that are created that are new and unique to a title. But I think there's also opportunities to have an invasion fleet coming in from the Blue Beetle universe and kind of going, hey, remember, knock, knock, we're your neighbors. And I think I liked that about Rebels when that book was out. And I think, any title that, gives me a sense of the DC universe being a part of itself, I think is always a good thing when they take an opportunity to do that from time to time. And Bedard did a really good job in this issue with doing that. And I felt like as a Blue Beetle reader, I'm like, wow, I'm getting a greater understanding of this as well. I think there's a little something for everybody in this issue. And he did it in a way where I don't think you're alienating fans that are only reading New Guardians. You're not throwing in something, you're explaining enough of the concept without ruining things for readers of the New Guardians where they're like, huh, who are these guys? They tell you just what you need to know.
They made it very natural. And it was interesting. They kind of implied that, at the end of, I think it was the 10th issue, that Larfleeze is behind all of this. And I really think the Guardians provided the Reach with the information on where Odin was. The Ganthet betrayed them to get the Blue Lanterns off the playing field.
And, well, then it goes back to, is Sade part of that?
Yeah. It goes back to just, I'm so excited about what's going to happen.
Yeah, but I mean, everything you're saying is true, and they're all questions that are on the table. What is Sade's involvement in all this? And is what has happened with Larfleeze, has that made Sade more open to being a part of what is going on with them? I don't know.
Yeah, you kind of wonder in a way if Larfleeze is being played. Is Sade really manipulating things behind the way and using Larfleeze to be the whipping boy? It's so interesting to figure out what's going to happen. But this particular issue, seeing all the different Corps come together and all these little things paying off, like Arkillo and the Weaponer of Cord and Monk, and seeing them all come back again, and it was a great issue.
Well, one of the things I really liked is each of these members of their particular corps, starting with Fatality, they had to sit there and face off with members of their corps or leaders in their corps to say, I'm going to do this anyway. I'm going to help St. Walker anyway, either by ignoring and just doing it anyway. And I love that conviction. These are comrades at arms. They've become friends in a short period of time, but they've been through with Invictus. They've been through a lot. And to have gained that respect for their comrades and realize the importance of that grouping that they've made, this New Guardian grouping that they've made, I am a huge fan of that. When you can take something, you don't just follow leaders blindly. When you take your own conviction, your own sense of who you are. Fatality is somebody who's a character that throughout her, I did read her when she was facing Kyle Rayner in Kyle's book way back when. And this is logical for who this character is. She's that character who we mentioned earlier about she understands rage and stuff like that and hate because she's been there before as Fatality. But to see her now having this conviction of love and yet then siding against her leaders to go and help St. Walker was something that I really got a lot of out of this. I also love in this issue, a lot of times the Blue Lanterns come off as a weaker corps. And St. Walker is really showing us in this issue, they're not as weak as we think they are. As a Blue Lantern, I think it's one of the harder lanterns to be. You really need to understand everything that goes along with being a Blue Lantern in order to survive. Because if you don't have a Green Lantern there, you've got to compensate with what the Blue Lanterns do have. And I felt we learned a lot in this issue about how your shield can augment your strength. There is more to them than meets the eye, more than we've ever seen. And I really, really dug that about this issue. I'm always a big fan of when I learn something new about a Corps. This actually stepped up my interest in the Blue Lantern Corps. I actually felt in this issue, I found they were far more interesting than I ever truly realized.
Yeah, their abilities were kind of downplayed, in the beginning. And I've kind of come to look at the Blue Lanterns as the Shaolin monks of the Green Lantern universe, in that, they're very peaceful, they're very calm, they're pretty nonviolent, but at the same time, you back them into a corner or you dishonor them in some way, and there is going to be, there is more there than what you might think. It's passive resistance in a lot of cases. What's interesting about this title is seeing what's coming up, that the face of the team, the makeup of the team is going to change, and so I'm kind of left wondering what's going to happen with Fatality in particular.
Yeah, those are all things that are standing out with me, and I think a lot of this is due to some of the choices some of the characters are making in this. I don't know. It's a universe that feels very real because you don't always feel that everybody is safe. And that's something that I really, really love, the sense of danger. And, you get emotionally attached to people because you can't help because of the great writing. And then but you can't help but wonder, who's expendable, who's not. And expendable doesn't always mean that we're losing them. It means that their status quo can change in some way where they're still very much there, but in a different capacity. And I'm a fan of that.
It's interesting because I think you and I both are sci-fi TV fans as well. Yeah. And it's kind of like the difference between Star Trek and Babylon 5. And that Star Trek, the crew is together and they face a trial and tribulation, but at the end of the episode, they're the same way they were in the beginning of the episode. Whereas in Babylon 5, it was more about the story being more important than any one character. And when someone was in danger, and it happened fairly often, a character would be compromised or maimed or killed, or their alliances would change. And that was more natural. And it was to be honest, it was a more exciting show to watch because you just didn't know what was going to happen. And I think that's how the comics are now, and that you can't assume the status quo is always going to be the status quo.
It was funny when Babylon 5 was on for a lot of the run of Babylon 5, Deep Space Nine was also running, which I greatly enjoyed as well. I always laughed when people would complain that they were so much alike. I'm like, you clearly aren't watching both programs if you think they're so much alike. And I don't mean that as a knock on either show. I was a huge DS9 fan. I was also a huge fan of Babylon 5. Babylon 5, very much a long-form story that had a start-to-finish planned. And I think, along the way, JMS, probably modified some of that based on how many seasons he was going to get and question marks on whether or not he was going to get the seasons because the show went through its own share of trials and tribulations. But it was a show that I greatly loved. I felt the DS9 had a progression, but it was a different sort of progression because of, there wasn't really a long-form story being told there, which isn't a knock on it. It was great. I thought DS9 was great Star Trek. Really, really enjoyed it. And I like that actually Babylon 5 and Star Trek are different. Because I think, to me, Star Trek does what Star Trek does so well. Babylon 5, if it went out there trying to be Star Trek light, was going to fail miserably.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I think over the years, a lot of things have tried to be Star Trek light, and it just ultimately winds up being unsatisfying. What helped Babylon 5 was that it wasn't that. It was that long-form story. Actually, I feel like a Babylon 5 has a lot to compare. The Green Lantern comparison to Babylon 5, I think, is really, really good because of the long-form story being told here that pays out over time. That's actually an excellent comparison to, I think, what is really going on in Green Lantern. And it's I definitely welcome here, especially when you see the things that are going on with St. Walker. And even his people, the ones that are losing hope. You start losing hope. Now, all of a sudden, you aren't going to survive this. You're going to become compromised. You're going to become a danger. And, when you've got these people who are typically a little more docile and they're without power, well, they become a potential liability.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting to see the Blue Lantern ring disengage from a Blue Lantern because they had lost their hope.
Right.
Because you don't see that happen with the Green Lanterns. It isn't like if you lose your will, your ring flies off. It was interesting to see that subtle difference and how it played out in this issue.
Yeah. The rookies, though, in the Green Lanterns, I think what ends up happening with them, we do see something similar in the sense that their ability to overcome the yellow, the fear, is not there if they're a rookie and they don't quite have that conviction that some of the Honor Guard do and some of the more veteran Lanterns do. I always liked that distinction, that their ability to overcome that wasn't there. But I think that's how it plays out in the Green Lanterns. In the case of the Blue Lanterns, if they lose their conviction, they lose their power. They lose their connection. It shuts off. And I like that, again, that goes back to what we were saying earlier. These Corps aren't cookie cutter, and they shouldn't be. The way that they react and the way that things drop off from them and things work or don't work for them should not look the same, because the emotional spectrum is going to be very different. And what the emotional spectrum will expect, hope is an emotion you've really got to fight for. And if you stop fighting for hope, you lose it. And if you lose hope, then it would make sense you would lose the power. I love that. It really shows a tailoring the concept to the emotion.
Yeah, it shows how they're all similar in some respects, but yet they all have their own identity, and there's differences in each one, and that's what makes it so intriguing is how they play off of each other and what's different, and how they're the same, how are they different. It's funny looking back over the history. I've been reading Green Lantern for more than I want to admit, and to see the whole color spectrum thing. It's like when that happened, I was like, why didn't somebody else think of this before? It's such an obvious thing, and it's been used to such great efficiency and such great dramatic purpose, and it's been there all along, just nobody ever saw it.
Well, and the beauty of it is, with what he's done, it wasn't just the throwaway villain, because it could have been done that way. You could have just brought another ring and made it a throwaway villain, and then just had no depth to it. Instead, they really they're really focusing on what the actual emotion itself means and how it makes them different and unique. I love that when we see St. Walker here and making that chain around the power battery, that link up chain around the power battery, we're seeing, because of his hope, there's innovation, being clever, finding ways to take a hopeless situation and do that one little thing to get in the way, that one little thing to stop what's happening around you, that one little thing to buy time that will allow an opportunity to perhaps survive, to win, to have help show up, to all of the different things that hope would bring. Hope isn't a guarantee. Hope is buying a few minutes. Maybe something will happen here. If not, let's try this and maybe something will happen here. And hope should feel that way. It was something I just ate up in this issue, how it's just a constant trying different things and trying to make hope out of hopelessness, that it really stood out for me as, in many ways, my respect for them over every other Corps, I think, is stronger because they have to keep striving for that. And I think it takes a special kind of being to do what they do here. And that was something that really, I think, just stood out.
Well, I thought this did a great job of really establishing St. Walker as to why he got the ring and why he is kind of the iconic Blue Lantern, because he really stepped it up. He really showed why he is a natural leader for them.
Yeah. And then I like how it was deactivated. It wasn't he died, because I think that's kind of something you're in danger of overdoing. If every Corps member has to die in order for there to be another one, what makes them unique? In this case, he got hopeless. Which in this case, you become hopeless. Well, I don't know how much you survived that fall, but. Maybe the ring decided he's hopeless and let him go. I don't know. Maybe the Blue Lantern rings are a little bit nastier than we're letting on, but you're hopeless.
It's kind of like a gag gift. You get the power ring, but if you lose hope in it, you're, wherever you are, you're SOL.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd be flying around if I had any chance of becoming hopeless.
I think I'd incorporate a parachute into my costume.
Right, exactly. But I could see in these situations how it would be hard to have hope, to find a way to press on, to keep fighting, to fight and believe that all will be well. And I love that St. Walker doing that rally cry has given them an opportunity to continue the battle before the Allies have been there. That was something that I thought was really important in this issue, too. I love the fact that a certain amount of time was spent in showing us the allegiances that have developed with the Allies. And they did that like in a page, basically, except for the fatality sequence. For the other ones, it was a page where Kyle Rayner was really kind of doing the shout-out to everybody. But the majority of this issue really focused on St. Walker and the concept of hope and what it means to this universe. And I think that was something that was really, really neat to see, that he didn't need the other ones. And I think that was important in that moment. Whatever comes of this battle, however it goes, I know what you're saying, how the team looks like it's going to change down the road. Whatever that means for this team down the road, all of these things that happen, it's these moments where we come to a greater understanding of these rings that are part of the reason that I really enjoy that Red Lanterns is his own book. I don't think that every color core needs its own book. I think they need time to be introduced like this. This is a great opportunity within a Green Lantern book to really showcase that. We got to see the Indigo Lanterns similarly portrayed in their own book. We've seen what's going on with the Sinestro Corps. This is really, really a cool opportunity to really show the danger and turmoil that all the Lantern Corps are going through, and who brought the reach here.
Yeah, well, and I think it also, when they spend the time developing these characters and showing more about them, it really goes to show that when you see any character wearing a ring of some sort, they're an exceptional being. They may be exceptionally scary or exceptionally angry, but they're exceptional beings.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Myron, one of the things I want to make sure we do before we end up wrapping up today, I want to make sure we shout out, first of all, congratulations again on your anniversary for both your website and your podcast. I mean, it's terrific. When you mentioned 3 years for the website, it didn't even dawn on me that it's been that long, because you were joining us on the show before the blog. And it made me realize just how long of a relationship we've had. And it's always terrific to have you on the show. And it's amazing that we've had this friendship for as long as we had. I didn't realize I'm like, wow, it really has been that long, hasn't it? But congratulations to you and the success of the blog of OA and the podcast of OA. Can you tell anyone out there, what is the blog of OA? What is the podcast of OA? And let's direct them to where they can get and be a part of all that, because it's terrific for any Green Lantern fans.
Well, and first off, it's all because of you guys that I do any of this. You guys kind of got me interested in it. I had kind of been away from comics for a little while, got back into it, and was looking at podcasts, discovered Raging Bullets, and I saw what really jumped out to me was what great ambassadors you guys are for the hobby. And I wanted to take that and do the same thing for the Green Lantern universe, because that's something that's been near and dear to my heart for most of my life. So I started the blog of OA, and the website is blogofoa.com. I started it just as a place to put information out there. It could be news, it could be comic book reviews, reviews of video games, reviews of the Green Lantern animated series, kind of a clearinghouse for information for anybody who's interested in the Green Lantern universe in any of its incarnations. So I started that, and it's been going, like I said, for about 3 years. It's a one-man job. So I do all of it myself. And about a year ago, after you and I had done some episodes of Raging Bullets, and you guys graciously had me on during Blackest Night and stuff, a coworker of mine who happened to get into Green Lantern, who does a lot of stuff with audio production and is really an audiophile, said, hey, let's do a podcast. So last year when the movie came out, we started our own podcast called The Podcast of O, which is kind of a companion piece to the blog. And we feature episodes. We do a new episode probably every 2 weeks, and we talk about the comics, and we talk about news, and we talk about the animated series. It's basically an audio companion for the blog. And you can find us. You can find episodes right on the blog of OA. You can stream them from the website, or on iTunes, or on the Zune Marketplace. So you can use any kind of podcast catcher to download the episodes. We're also on Stitcher, so you can find us on Stitcher and stream episodes on your phone or on your computer. You can do it that way as well. We have a Facebook group, and we're also on Twitter. So you can find us in most of the common places you can find social media. You'll find us there. And we just try to be a clearinghouse for Green Lantern information and to be ambassadors and promote the whole mythology.
It's terrific, and I know that you've got a whole section up there, Green Lantern 101. Honestly, I want to recommend for anybody out there, if you're listening to this and you have not had any exposure to Green Lantern, and you're like, it's always been a universe I've been trying to jump into, Blog of O is really a great place to start. There's a lot of things there that really ease you into the universe. And, it's a great opportunity for you to kind of get your feet wet in the Green Lantern universe. You mentioned that you've got a great community. It's a great spot to go and ask questions about Green Lantern. So definitely, consider that, even if you're a newbie, a must-go-to destination if you're interested at all in getting on board Green Lantern. You're like, I don't know where to start. I don't know, about this character, that character. It's a great place to go to have that opportunity. So, Myron, you've been a terrific friend of the show long before you were podcasting and doing the blog, and I think it's terrific to see your success with what's been going on with the blog and podcast of O, and I congratulate you on that, and I think it's terrific.
And one of the things I've got to say because I know there are people out there that are in similar positions that I was in, is if you're really geeking out about a book that you really like, get involved with the community in some way. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that I have found just in doing this, I never expected to be doing this for 3 years or doing a podcast or God knows, never expected to be interviewing the producer of the animated series. Never had any clue any of that kind of stuff was on the horizon. But it was just embracing my love of something and doing it. So if Blue Beetle is your thing, start up a Blue Beetle site, because you'd be surprised at how many people are out there that are like-minded like yourself. I never expected to have a Facebook page with hundreds of people all chatting about Green Lantern, and it kind of runs itself. But finding people who are just as passionate. I live in an area – I live in the Finger Lakes in New York State, and I can't get to the conventions as much as I want to. They're not geographically close enough or financially a viable opportunity for me. So I miss that interaction with other fans. And you would be surprised how many people are out there who are thinking the exact same way you are. And there's an easy way to get involved and find those people, and that's just by stepping forward. Whether it's Sean, you allow people to put things on your guys' site, write an article, write something, do your own podcast, get involved, because you'd be surprised in how you explore your fandom. You will broaden your horizons and meet all kinds of people that you never would thought you'd meet before.
It's one of the things when we started podcasting, first of all, I didn't think we'd still be doing it for as long as we have been either. It's just been, like you said, a joy of connecting with people. And like you said, finding like-minded people who are looking to just have fun with comics. But one of the things that I really love is when people start new blogs, new websites, things like that, or anything that they think is related to comics or, geek culture or anything that they think would be interested in to our friends and audience. I love cross-promotion. I think it's really terrific. People have been very good to us over the years. You've been terrific as far as always shouting us out. And, I think it's one of the reasons why I love doing this. I wish I could do it more. It's one of the things, I'm sure, with doing a blog and a podcast of your own now. There's always more things that we'd love to do to interact and connect with each other in time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very thankful for my Facebook group, too. There's so many great people on there that will, like you said, you mentioned earlier how yours kind of has taken on a life of its own. Ours has done the same thing. And it really is because once you connect with that fan community, these people become friends and they start interacting and they start sharing their own ideas. And I love seeing that kind of go beyond what we do. And I love seeing how yours has gone beyond what you do. I think that's really terrific. And you're right. There's so much out there, from doing a larger podcast to doing a smaller podcast. Whatever you love, there's plenty of room out there for commentary. Don't be afraid to leap in. It's, when Jim and I started doing this, we had no background in any of this. We hadn't done like radio shows or podcasts or anything like that before. We just started doing it. And, you get better over time doing it. It's an easy avenue to get in. Blogs are easy to get in on as far as, if you'd rather write than do audio commentary. There's a lot of easy, very simple opportunities to get your own voice out there and heard and get connected with fans. And it's also a great way to support titles. I get frustrated when anything that I'm enjoying gets canceled, whether it's a big book or a small book. And I think a great way to support those titles is really because comics need more positive commentary. Anytime there's a news announcement, you go to any website where there's a news announcement, you're going to get a lot of people that are immediately doing those hit and run negative comments on it. Yep. The nice thing is nowadays you're getting a lot of people that are on the opposite end of the spectrum that will come in and defend it. But I think it's really important that it's not just comments, that there's more straight from the beginning commentary that are blogs and podcasts and whatever that are showing and embracing a love. I loved your, using Blue Beetle just as an example. If you're a Blue Beetle fan, go do a Blue Beetle podcast. There's so much room for so many different kinds of things, whether it's new material, classic material, whatever. So much opportunity to do more in the geek culture. world. So if you have something that you love and you're afraid to get started in podcasts, please feel free to contact me. I get messages all the time from people who want to get started. It's so easy to do. It really is. It sounds like it's a lot. Sounds like it's a lot harder than it is. It's much easier than you would think.
And the other thing is that the community really supports each other. You know, that's one of the things I know when I first started. I think I asked you a ton of questions about, well, how do you do this and how do you do that? And people are willing to do that. And I think it's interesting. As well as the Green Lantern books have sold, there really aren't that many resources out there. I think there's maybe 2 other podcasts besides my own that focus just on Green Lantern, and not nearly as many websites. So you'd be surprised that if you embrace the niche you're in. I mean, you often talk about how Raging Bullets is a niche. Well, the blog of O and the podcast for are a niche within a niche, and you'd be surprised that even with just a small focus, how many people are out there that are looking for content that don't know where to find it, because there isn't a clearinghouse. And like I said, if you're a Blue Beetle fan, jump on board and do something with it. Or if you're loving what Jeff Johns is doing with Aquaman, get out there and promote it, because I think, as you said, Sean, it's easy to have the negative commentary. It's harder to find people who are willing to be positive ambassadors and really, I don't want to say draw a line in the sand because that sounds confrontational, but promote what they like. Why waste your energy on the negativity? If you really love something, if something really means something to you, go out there and support it. And whether it's just writing an article for a website that's already out there, or making your own thing, or whatever. But I think, geek culture has gotten to such a scale and scope and magnitude in this day and age, where there are thousands of people out there who feel just as much of a connection as you do to whatever it is that you love. But there's no focal point, or there's no common ground for them to meet. And you can be that.
I love that in podcasting and in blogging and all that, we don't consider each other a threat to each other. It's one of the things because I think people can get like needlessly nitpicky about stuff like that, and so worried, if another podcast comes out, it's going to take away a list. I have never found that my experience. I found that the more blogs and podcasts that have popped up, the more notice it's brought to podcasting. It's been better for my show. It's been better for the other people. So don't hesitate, if you are a podcaster out there, to embrace the community aspect of podcasting or blogging. It's one of the reasons why I like people to post in our areas. It's just the opposite. It's not even that I allow people to post there. If you want to get the word out and you want, our people to kind of go over and take a look, do it. Because, one hand washes the other. It always ends up coming back our way in the end. And I love that aspect of it. There's the DC Noise is a great example of, it's another DC podcast out there. Are we competition for each other? Absolutely not. And the reason why is because, yes, we're covering the same type of material, but there's different people on each one, and there's going to be a different approach because of that different dynamic. So they're 2 completely different programs, and some people are going to like our program more, some people are going to like their program more, and other people are going to find a complementary nature between that. Blog of Oa in our show. Great example of, we don't cover every issue of Green Lantern. We can't. We're trying to cover the whole DC universe. It's great for that fan out there who likes our show, but then they're like, you know what? I like getting the whole DC aspect that Raging Bullets does, but then it's fun to get like somebody who's delving heavy into Blog of Oa. There's so many great Batman podcasts out there that are friends of our show that are doing just great, Batman commentary. We cover Batman. I'm a Batman junkie too, but I can't cover every issue of that. It's the same thing. And I think that's really the great part of, you mentioned the community aspect, and I'm glad you shouted that out, because I've been so pleasantly surprised. I've never once felt in any interaction I've ever had with any other podcaster or blogger that we are in any way, shape, or form in competition with each other. If anything, we all genuinely want each other to do better, because it's good for all of us. We recognize that, hey, if we help each other out, it's only going to up notice for all of our shows and get the audience to us that we need. Because if you take a look at the podcasting audience compared to the comic book reading audience, there's more people to tap into that will listen to and enjoy podcasts and blogs and things like that aren't aware that we're out there.
Sure. Yeah, they don't know we exist. And I love the fact that there are 2 or 3 other Green Lantern podcasts out there because there's something for everybody. I mean, one of the things that I strive on doing is to try to make sure that my recordings are family friendly, because with the animated series out there, I'm hoping there are a lot of kids discovering the Green Lantern mythology, and I want to be an avenue for them to explore what they like. So I intentionally curb my language, and that's not always true with different podcasts. So I offer that piece that maybe somebody else doesn't offer, but maybe they offer something that I don't do. And so I think, they all have value in different ways and shapes and forms, and somebody may not like what I do, but they may like what somebody else does. So there's a great show that maybe they embrace more than mine, or maybe they find something more in my show that they embrace. And I don't see it as competition at all. I think we're all just putting their best foot forward, and obviously we're talking about things we're excited about, and you find voices that you resonate with, whether it's my voice or somebody else's voice.
It's funny. A lot of times we don't get a chance to talk about podcasting except at like conventions where they do podcasting panels and people ask really good questions. And I think one of them that I really enjoyed, and I forget what convention we were at, somebody asked a question about the competition aspect of it. And I've never felt that. It's been one of the really terrific things. And I don't think I would enjoy this as much if I felt like I was on the attack of some other podcast. I think what podcasting needs, and what I think makes podcasting grow, is people knowing there's a variety, and knowing there's a lot of choices, and knowing that it's a viable medium to get steady content no matter what your mood is. And that's something that's just great. And you're a big part of that. I think you just embrace that, and I love how successful you are. I love seeing so many of our friends who have become very successful doing blogs and podcasts, depending on what their interests are, whether they like writing more or podcasting more, or a hybrid, such as what you're doing. And I just think it's terrific, and I love seeing the success rate of all of it, and it's great. And I want to thank you once again for your friendship and for coming on the show for this. I was really excited to have you back on and talking Green Lantern, because it's a universe that I think DC is just thriving with, and I think it's great to be able to take a look at all these books, the animated series, and even talk about the film a little bit, and just the success that Green Lantern has been seeing.
Well, I love being on the show, Sean. I love having another voice to bounce off of, and being a part of it, and just being able to talk about something I love so much. And I know next year my goal is to get to one of the bigger conventions. So I'm going to be contacting you and Jim to find out what your convention schedule is, because whatever show it is, I want to go to a show you guys are going to be at, so we can finally meet face to face. And I owe you dinner. So we're definitely going to have to hook up.
Yeah, no, it'd be definitely fun to see you. So we definitely should try to make a plan this year to try and get together, because I agree with you. It's long overdue. So it'd be great to especially, I didn't realize when you mentioned the blog and how long it'd been around. I'm like, oh my, have we really known each other that long already? That means we're having fun in there somewhere, that the time has passed so quickly.
That's right. We didn't realize how much fun we were having.
All right. Well, thank you once again, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Sean. Love you. I love you guys.
Oh, no, you don't.
Hey, it's the Sensei. I'm traveling again, and I'm in JFK Airport, so I figured I'd give the show a quick call. And actually, this time I'm going to talk about some comics I read. I know that's kind of shocking for me. Usually I don't. But Jeff Lemire's Sweet Tooth, I brought with me Volumes 1 and Volume 2, and oh my God, this is awesome. I wish I had grabbed Volume 3. I'm just getting them in the trades, by the way. I usually only travel with just my trades. Charlie kept saying, "Oh, you got to read this. You got to read this." I'm like, yeah. I'll get to it. Holy crud! I wish I hadn't waited. I'm actually thinking about maybe pursuing and getting some floppies and actually going that way. Or I may stick with the trades. I'll probably stick with the trades. Really good, very good title. Let's see here. Written and illustrated by the great Joe Kubert. Jewish Gangster. It was a really neat story. I dig the organized crime kind of stories, and I've always had a fascination with that. So this is, again, you're kind of I want to say a classic gangster story, but I don't want to diminish the story. It was a really cool, powerful character piece, and it really explored this kid and his progression through organized crime, how he got there, why he got there. And last one, another Vertigo hardback story, Dark Reign, New Orleans story, written by Matt Johnson and art by Simone Gain? Yeah, Simone Gain, Gane. And I actually wanted to make sure I acknowledge both parties involved, because this was not only just about the story but the artwork. This was a really cool, kind of heavy black and white, but there were some color accentuations to it, but it was more of a black and white piece, just about a guy down on his luck, and, well, it had some Katrina stuff going on in there, and it was a nice little mixture. It was a really cool, story that unfolded within the backdrop of Katrina. And I am traveling, by the way, to New Jersey because my super awesome niece, Cassandra, just graduated high school. We got to see her graduate and go through all that family celebration and whatnot. It was a really swell time. So that's about it. So I actually talk some comics for a change when I call in. But I'm at the JFK airport just about 2-3 hours early. So I got a couple more books to read. Cuba, My Revolution, and a couple monthlies to go through. So that's about it for now, unless something interesting happens. Hopefully, knock on wood, nothing will happen noteworthy of calling in. Alrighty, bye.
You see, this is exactly why I think recommendations are so important. These are books, especially, Sweet Tooth has been a book that I've been both on and off the show telling Jim that, hey, you need to read this book. It's absolutely awesome. So I'm thrilled that he's reading it and enjoying it. And, the funny thing is, we got to remember with recommendations, not every recommendation you're going to give somebody is going to be one that's going to apply to them. You might love it and they might not, but recommendations are great because you're still pushing titles that you're enjoying and giving people an opportunity to try them. I love that Jim had a very interesting mix of classic material and with Jew Gangster and stuff like that, straight on through to newer material like Sweet Tooth and Cuba, My Revolution and stuff like that he's reading. And I just think it's great. So I mean, I don't have much to say other than I'm glad that he's enjoying those books, and it's kind of cool to have the sensei as part of this episode. So I'm glad that he called in with that. I didn't know that phone call was going to be him, so that's awesome.
Hey, Sean and Jim, this is Rick Croxton from the Book K podcast. I know it's been quite a while since the last time I talked to you guys, but I was listening to your latest episode, and you was talking about Thomas Wayne Jr. He's a character who does have some history from the pre-crisis DC. He only appeared, as far as I know, only one time, and I can't remember the issue. It might have been World's Finest, though, but he had problems back then too, mental, where his origin was he was taken out by a nanny or something like that, and in a baby carriage when he's a very young child. And the baby carriage got away from the nanny and was struck by a car or something like that, but he got brain damage and it was incurable, so they put him, I believe, into an asylum or something like that. And of course, kind of like this present-day Thomas Wayne Jr., Bruce never knew about it. And years later, there's some murders happening. And we come to find out it is done by Thomas Wayne Jr., but he's being influenced by others. And I said it's pretty much it's a done in one, if I remember correctly. And Deadman is part of the series too, and Deadman takes over the body of Thomas Wayne Jr. to perhaps be his own body for a while, since Thomas is not very functioning. I don't believe there was any time he ever said a word. He was handy at carving and stuff. And it was hinted that we'd be seeing more, but I don't remember ever seeing anything out after that. So it's like 40 years in the making almost. So you got me curious. And if he's like I have not read any of the new 52 yet. And if it sounds like he's part of the Owl series or Owlman series characters, both creatures of the night, makes you wonder. Well, keep up the good work, guys. I'm going to keep on checking in. You guys might get me back into the new DC 52. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye for now.
For some reason, I remember that. And I'm not saying I remember it the way you do, Rick, because, I mean, obviously that was terrific. I don't know if it was that I actually read that story, or I've read so many books over the years about Batman where it's, books that have analyzed his series, analyzed his appearances, talked about characters that have made appearances. I'm sure that there's been something that I've read in there that's had like the pre-crisis Thomas Wayne Jr. and made mention of that. So I'm thinking that's more what I've read than actually reading the issue like you did. But that's cool. That's neat that Snyder went and took something from the past. And you're right. He brought it in really close to what was going on pre-crisis with Thomas Wayne Jr., with Bruce not knowing and everything. I mean, so that's really, really cool that has such deep roots there, that he brought it in that way and then added something. We're talking about a lot of this on this episode, where I'm really liking how creators will take something from the past, but instead of just regurgitating it, they will add something to it. Take it, explain things that we never saw, those off-camera things, or adding an element into the story to make it something that is an homage to the original story at the same time, but adding your own little spin, adding your own little twist, taking a concept that a creator originally came up with that was super cool and adding something more to it to make it even better, even more today, even more current. And I think that's a kind of a cool way to honor something really neat from the past while at the same time, adding something new for newer readers and things. I don't know. It's just really, really neat. So thank you for sharing that, as always. If you haven't checked out The Book Cave, please do yourself a favor and check out The Book Cave. It's a terrific podcast. We've had an opportunity to record with Rick before, and it obviously, just from his comments on there, his knowledge of classic comic history is just terrific. But it's a show with a lot of variety, and he covers all kinds of comics from the past and the present it's a really, really neat show with a ton to offer. So if you haven't checked it out, be sure to check it out. And there's links right in the show notes to The Book Cave.
Hey guys, I just wanted to get your take on this little thing that I'm about to ask you. Since The Dark Knight Rises comes out in 2 weeks, and I've been thinking a lot about it, especially about how much they're pushing this whole the legend ends and the epic conclusion to the Dark Knight legend. And it seems like they're putting a lot of emphasis on the ending of the film. I gotta ask, do you guys personally think that Batman/Bruce Wayne will die at the end? There is a line in the trailer where it says the Catwoman says you've given them everything, and Batman replies, not everything, not yet. And that makes me wonder what exactly he means by not everything. Anyway, just wanted to get you guys' take on this, so see you.
It's funny. Hi, Adam. It's funny that there's a thread in the Facebook group that is talking about this, and I shared some of my comments over there, and I'll kind of go into it a little bit here. I don't know. I agree with you. If you take a look at the trailers and with the way the movie's going to go, is it possible that Bruce could die in this? Yes, I do think it's a possibility. I'm not convinced that's the only possibility, though. And I think Nolan and the whole creative behind this wants us debating this. I think, there's all of us that are saying they can't do that. They can't kill Batman. And I think there's validity to that. But I think there's also validity that this was always looked at to be a trilogy. And Nolan might possibly want to do that to make a statement, an impact, and have this, his idea of Batman being a symbol, being, something greater than the man, then show somebody taking over the role. There's also a part of me that thinks that if they do the death of Batman, it might not be, a death of Batman in the sense that it'll be like a death later on in his life, and we will see the mantle being taken over by somebody he inspires in this film. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on, or if they'll do something similar to what was done in Batman and Robin. So I don't know what's going to happen in this. There's part of me that's convinced that there's no way possibly they could kill off Batman, and this is really just to, convince us that that's possible. But then I will admit there is a part of me that, I'm walking into this film with an intensity because I'm thinking to myself that anything's possible. And I don't know that I don't want to know before I go in. I'm going to the midnight show. I'm actually doing the marathon. They have on the 19th that big mega marathon where you're going to see Begins, The Dark Knight, and Dark Knight Rises. I'm going to do that with a few buddies of mine, and I'm really, really excited to do that. And I don't want to know anything beforehand. So I hope they really keep a lock on this and it's not revealed ahead of time, because I don't want to know. I want to walk in, I want to experience in the film, and I want to see it that way without walking in with a preconceived notion. I like what I know now. Like this conversation that we're having, this is the kind of stuff I want to do walking in. Hey, do you think it's it's going to happen or not? I think that's cool. That adds an excitement and energy to the whole thing going in. And then, after I've seen the film, obviously we'll talk on the show how we felt about whatever happens, either way. And there's going to be more to the movie than whether or not he lives or dies. It's the whole build of the story. I mean, it's a 2-hour and 45-minute movie, roughly, and I'm just estimating there. But I've seen online, I think it was 2:44, I think it said that it came in. That's, it's a big, meaty film. And I'm glad. I'm glad that they're going for an almost 3-hour film, because it's a big story that they're telling. Regardless of whatever the end result is, the whole story leading to that is something that's interesting. There's that, I'm going to admit, there's that geeky fanboy part of me that does not want them to kill him. And I don't want to see that. But then there's that part of me that's really enjoyed these movies that is convinced if Nolan was going to go that route, they're going to do it in a way that I'm going to respect for the type of story that it is. And I don't know. It's it's in its own universe. I'm really excited to see what the take of this is. I don't know, what the intention is if they're going to do that. I'm very torn on it, and not in a bad way. I'm excited and anticipating the movie, and I'm trying not to make any definitive decisions on that walking in, because I just think that would be a detriment to my enjoyment of the film if I started going, oh, they're going to kill him, and I'm so angry about that. I don't want to get in that place, because I want to see the execution if they go that route. And I'm convinced that's an if. I really am convinced that's an if. Just because that's been going in so many trailers, I'm wondering if that's a red herring. And, that they're throwing that out there specifically to get us chatting like this and thinking about, wow, could they really do it? And if so, it's brilliant. Because I think the way that they've done it has me so convinced that it's a possibility. That possibility is a good word for it. I don't think anything's set in stone. I think all bets are off. I think, I keep thinking that, wow, the trailers have really revealed a lot. But then when I see that it's a 2-hour and 45-minute film, I'm like, they really haven't. There's a whole lot of characters in there. The new police officer obviously has a big role in this, supposedly. And I would love to know what that role is going to be. There's a kid that's sitting there. Do you think he's going to come back and that type of thing? I don't know. There's a lot that's being revealed in those trailers. I don't remember being this excited for a movie in a long, long time. The marathon was something that when I saw that was coming, I'm like, oh, that's the way I want to see it. I've seen both Batman Begins and The Dark Knight many, many times. Batman Begins even more. I keep watching that movie over and over again because that one's honestly is my favorite out of the two. And because I love the training of Bruce, that aspect of it I've always really, really loved. But I'm really, really excited to see the conclusion of this, and it's going to be a mega event. So I can't wait till that episode. We are going to be recording that episode the weekend of the release. So if anybody goes and sees it and they would like to send in voicemails for it, you're going to want to send them in right away, because we're going to be doing that. Or, as with any voicemails, you can always keep calling in after we've recorded the episode, and your thoughts will get on the show. I air all voicemails, so please feel free to do that. By the way, our show voicemail line is 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. And we love having you part of the show. These discussions have been really, really great. I love when we get listener feedback on what you guys are interested in talking about and what you're thinking about things. But yeah, that Dark Knight Rises. This has been a great summer of superhero films. Avengers was absolutely fantastic. Amazing Spider-Man I've seen twice now. Really, really loved that. And I'll actually go out on a limb, because we don't get a chance to talk about this. For myself, first of all, I loved the Tobey Maguire flick, so this isn't a knock on them. I grew up with Spidey. I've loved Spidey since the 67 cartoon series, which was airing in reruns in the 70s. And Spider-Man Has Amazing Friends, all that stuff. Marvel Team Up was one of my first comic book series that I was getting by subscription of all time. I was getting that along with Batman. And I'm a big Spider-Man fan. And I got to be honest, I liked this even better. And it may be just because it's the new one, in the sense. But, I mean, I think that's a statement of quality. I wasn't like going into this one going, it wasn't quite as good as the Maguire flicks. The one thing that really stood out for me in this one was the action. I really loved the Spider-Man battle sequences in this. They felt like something out of the animated series that I mentioned as a kid, where it's a lot of fast-moving Spider-Man moves. I loved the web shooters being back. I didn't have an issue with the organic web shooters, so I'm not one of those that's going, I hated that. I liked that. But what I loved in the film, that the fact that they were built by Spidey became a story element in there. We got to see them being created, and then besides that, in battle sequences, the fact that they were something that was created became a part of those battles. And I won't say too much more for anybody that hasn't seen it, other than to say that this Amazing Spider-Man was really just a tremendous, tremendous flick. I love the new guy. Emma Stone I thought was terrific as Gwen Stacy. And it was just kind of cool to see all that stuff brought to bear. I love Captain Stacy being a part of it, and the Lizard was awesome. So it was just a very, very well done flick. And that's no knock on the first two Spider-Man movies. 3, I didn't hate 3 as much as other people did, but 3 was definitely the weak link in the series. 1 and 2 I thought were brilliant. And then this one, I didn't mind the reboot because it looks like the reboot is going to be part of a trilogy where they're going to be doing a lot more. And I won't say what it looks like they're doing because it's a big plot point of the film. But there is a reason clearly for the reboot with what they're doing, and it's not just going to be a throwaway like, hey, we're telling the origin again. They've put some changes into there that are really going to have a major story element. But I thought Uncle Ben and Aunt May, I thought the casting was really Martin Sheen and Sally Field. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. I mean, it's a great film. I saw it twice, and honestly, I loved it just as much. And that's a telling thing for me. I loved it just as much the second time as when I saw it the first time. And I think that's a sign of a great film, a great superhero film. You're not caught up in the awe and wonder the first time through. You loved it just as much the second time through. So Spider-Man was just terrific. I think it's just been a great summer for superhero films. And, you go from Avengers to Spider-Man. And now for me, Dark Knight Rises is just going to be great, great year. And I just hope this superhero trend continues because I love that these movies get big, big buzz and that people are seeing them and they're interested. I think it's good for comic books. I think it's good for animated series that tie in because I want this stuff all over the place. I don't just want it in comic books. I want to be able to, toys, statues, all kinds of posters, different things like that because I just think it's a great way, even if not everybody's going to read comic books, for us to have communications with people about this geek culture stuff that we all like. It opens up an avenue. And I think it's really cool. So, yeah, Dark Knight Rises is definitely on the top of my list for the summer. I'm looking at this now. This is my movie. This is the one. Especially, and I mean, there is the element, too, that we get to talk about this on the podcast, which I'm always excited to talk about a film on the podcast. And I know Dark Knight Rises, we're going to do something meaty with on the show. I have a few ideas, and I got to check with Jim and see what his thoughts are and what his scheduling is. But I have a few ideas for the kind of episode that I want to do relating to this. And I'm hoping that my one plan really is going to pay off because I want to talk about Dark Knight Rises and something else Batman related on that same episode. And I'll save that until I know for sure. But definitely there will be a major Dark Knight Rises episode coming this month.
Hey, Sean and Jim. This is Ryan from Louisiana. I just got done reading Earth 2 number 3, and I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on how Alan Scott's getting his power now from the Green, which is kind of making him equivalent to Swamp Thing in the primary Earth from DC, kind of the champion of the Green for Earth 2, and how Solomon Grundy is going to be similar to Anton Arcane in Earth 1, kind of be the champion of the Gray or the Rot. I want to know if you think that that's as cool as I think it is. I'm a real big fan of what Scott Snyder and Jeff Lemire are doing with that concept in Swamp Thing and Animal Man, and I'm really happy to see that James Robinson is introducing that into the Earth 2 series. I also wanted to see if you had any thoughts on who James Robinson might introduce as Champion of the Red in Earth 2. I know it's not the traditional origin of Hawkgirl, but I think it would be kind of cool if maybe Hawkgirl drew her powers from the Red or whatever he would call that faction on Earth 2. So wondering if you had any thoughts on that opinion on that matter. I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I love listening to it every week, and keep up the positive vibe. Thanks.
Yeah, I didn't expect that to be the case for Alan Scott, and I love it. I think it's great, because I love the Starheart idea. I always loved the idea that Alan Scott was always a little different than our Green Lanterns anyway. With his vulnerability being different to Wood and stuff like that in the past. I always liked that. I always liked that there was a distinction between the two because they were from different Earths. There was different origins. There was different backgrounds from their powers. And this kind of makes sense with where, like you said, our Earth is going with the green and the gray and the red, obviously. I would love to see the red brought over. I don't know if that's going to be Hawkgirl or not. I would have no issue if it was. It's funny, with Earth 2, I'm just really enjoying the ride. And I love James Robinson's work. I love his love for the multiverse concept. I love that he does things long form. Like, to me, the idea of having him on writing on that Earth just makes a lot of sense. It just seems to be, when he was on Justice League, he had this long planned direction for that series. And I think this is a really good fit for him and for his style of storytelling. So I'm really excited to see that, down the road, we're going to have these characters introduced gradually. I love, like you said, he's not ignoring what's going on in our world. And he's mirroring certain things, but then twisting them because it's a brand new, different universe. Alan Scott being the main champion of that world, looking like that he's going to be that figurehead, is always kind of how I viewed him anyway. So it's great to have him being like, that figurehead. I love what they've done with The Flash. I love Hawkgirl's introduction. I don't know who it's going to be. She had the dreads was something I noticed. I don't know, what that's going to mean for her. If it's going to be Kendra on that world or a new version of Kendra or somebody new, totally new. I don't know. I'm anxious to see that. And if it winds up that she's somehow linked to the Red, that's fantastic. If not, that's fantastic too, because, I just am enjoying that ride altogether. So I don't really have an opinion on that, other than I think you got a really cool idea, and we'll see where that goes. But yeah, no, and the Solomon Grundy thing I enjoyed as well. I think, it makes logical sense. This is a brand new world, a brand new direction. But you know what I loved? I really felt like Alan Scott still felt like Alan Scott. And that's hard to do when you're modernizing him as much as they've done in this series. And that's something that I think has been very clever. Jay Garrick has that same kind of Jay Garrick feel to me. A very young Jay Garrick, but he still feels like Jay Garrick. And that's something that I've been excited for all along. I think there's a lot of things they can play with and tweak there. There's already been appearances by characters like the Atom, or at least, Al Pratt. I don't know, how that's going to turn into him being the Atom. I think obviously the accent that we saw him be a part of is going to be a part of that. But we got to see, the Mr. Terrific from that world already. And I don't know, I just think it's a great universe that's being carefully crafted and developed. And I like seeing over time just how it's going to go. So I'm with you. And thank you for the kind words about the show, and really appreciate you listening and calling in with your thoughts on that series. I love that. The funny part is, I'll be 100% honest, I wasn't even thinking of the Red. I thought the whole green and the gray thing was cool, and I hadn't gone as far as you had with it. I love that you're speculating on that. I'm trying to think of other characters from the JSA who might possibly fit into that role. I do think you're right, the Hawks, with the nature of their powers from things like the Nth Metal and stuff like that, and I guess if you go the route of it being more animal-based, that would make a lot more sense. So I don't know. I don't know if the origin's going to be totally different over there because of, it being more animal-based and going the route you said. So there is kind of a logic to what you're saying. I don't know. I'm pleasantly enjoying the whole entire ride of that particular book. It's funny, multiple listeners have made mentions both on our Facebook and in emails and stuff like that about how much they're enjoying the stuff coming out of Earth 2, from World's Finest to the Earth 2 book as well, and how they would love more. And I do hope that it's successful enough that we can maybe get another series out of her, or mini-series even. You don't want to oversaturate the market with it because you don't want to risk destroying what works. But by the same token, I think there's a lot of opportunity to tell miniseries set in that world. And, it's over time. And I'm glad that series seems to be very successful. And I hope anybody who hasn't tried it gives it a shot, because it's very cool.
You won't get away from me this time, Buster.
Want to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show, and thanks for calling in on this episode. It just adds some great discussion points. I want to give a shout out to our social media groups. We have a show Facebook group, we have a Twitter account, we have a Google Plus account. Remember, our Facebook group is different than a regular Facebook page. We have a group. Make sure you join the group if you're not already a member. We have a couple hundred members, and I really love the activity that goes on there. It's taken on a life of its own. I love Google Plus, Twitter. It's great to see everybody. So whatever's convenient for you, please consider joining up and following us and being a part of those discussions, because it's great outside of the show to hear what you guys are thinking of that we don't get a chance to get to on the episode. It's amazing. You don't think how much we record. There's a lot of things we don't have a chance to get to. Once again, sponsoring us this episode is DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at dcbservice.com, they're offering that 50% off the Zero issues. That's 55 books, $174.45 regularly, 50% off, only $87.23. That's an amazing discount, especially if you're somebody who doesn't normally get all those books, but you're like, I'd really like the Zeros just to see the directions that some of these books are going in or some of the backstory. This is a great opportunity to get a hold of those books. Remember, they are a digital partner for Comixology and also for Iverse Media. You can earn 5% of those purchases towards credit at dcbservice.com. So make sure you link those accounts and do your purchasing through their site. Doesn't cost you any more to do that. And obviously that will link to any of your devices. So if you're using any of that and purchasing any of that digital media, do it through their website. They get credit for it and you get credit for it towards purchases at dcbservice.com. So make sure to use that. Over at InStockTrades.com, you want to make sure to check out their 60% off deal on certain DC trades. They've got a lot of DC trades at amazing discounts. Adam Strange, The Man of Two Worlds, $19.95 regularly, 60% off, only $7.98. All New Adam, I loved this series. $14.99 regularly, 60% off, only $6. And that collects issues 12 to 16 of that series. They have Volume 1 is there as well, and Volume 2. So you can actually get all those trades. Each one of those is $6, 6, 12, 18. For $18, you can get the first 3 trades, the first 16 issues of the all-new Adam series. I mean, that's amazing. And that's over at InStockTrades.com. They have just a bunch of them there. So if you know there's something that you're looking for in particular, they have those discounts on hardcovers and softcovers as well. So that's a DC special they're running right now. So go check them out at InStockTrades.com. I want to shout out our show episodes. We've got a bunch of episodes coming up the next few weeks. And Jim and I are going to be doing a special episode around Dark Knight Rises. My plan is to release it on the Saturday, the day after the movie airs. And we're going to do, as usual, an in-depth look at the film. I'm thrilled and excited for this film. It's going to be 2 hours, I believe, and 45 minutes, I think is what the running time is. And I'm just estimating there. But I thought that's what I saw online that it's going to be. I'm going to the marathon on Thursday night. I'm going to go see all 3 movies back to back. I'm super excited for this because I'm going to go see it on Friday again because I want to have it fresh in my head for a big recording on Saturday. We're also going to put with that, just because we can't stop there, we're going to do Batman Earth 1. We're going to do that hardcover there. I'm a big fan of these DC original hardcovers, and it just seems to be the sweet spot to put that in, to do a special episode for you guys. That'll be something meaty. We did a meaty one last time, and we figured this one will give us a chance to give you another meaty episode as well. Then the episode after that, we're going to be taking a look at Before Watchmen, and we're also going to take a look at books like Batgirl and Batwoman, which are books in the whole Batman thing that's been going on lately with the Court of Owls. We've talked about those books, but Batwoman in particular we haven't talked about in depth. Batgirl is a favorite for Jim and myself. We're big Gail Simone junkies. So we're going to talk about the two females in the Bat family who we both love, and we think they're just terrific characters. So that's going to be the episode after that. Jim and I have also a bunch of other special shows in the works that we're kind of teeing around, like when are we going to talk about this book, when are we going to talk about that book. We want to keep going through the universe gradually and touching on every book. We're definitely going to be doing that, especially when the Zero issues hit. We're going to try to touch on every single Zero issue that's being released by DC, because we figure that's a great time to take a look at the books and the directions they're heading in. Plus, the new releases are going to be launched off of that. So it's going to be a great opportunity for us to take a look at the state of the universe in September. A lot of big things coming. I'm enjoying right now, as of when I'm recording this, the San Diego news that's coming out. There's a ton of great San Diego news. I did put direct links to that in our Facebook group. Newsarama does those great live feeds from there, so I did links to all of those. Just figuring it'd be a great conversation starter for people who might want to talk about certain panels. And if you want to, feel free to jump on there. But if you want to chat about anything, jump into our Facebook group, call our show voicemail line. I do air, as you hear on this episode, every single voicemail that we get. So please feel free to call in the show. If there's something we haven't talked about in a while that you want to shout out, we love to have your commentary a part of our show. And we will see you all next week with Dark Knight Rises and Earth 1.
Bye!
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see, Hawkman, your plan, and what you do to me, Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thanin Guard or Egyptian, working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, Hawkman, Eagle eyes can't